world. Last Outrider here with another fantastic, thought-provoking video for you. This time, as the title says, Warhammer 40K is not science fiction. This is a deceptively important topic. Why? Because with Henry Cavill making live action and the new Games Workshop trying to bring 40K more into the mainstream, it's important to really understand what genre is the Warhammer 40K universe. Now, for fans, we simply call it grimdark. All right, but what the hell does that really mean? It just means it's fucking depressing. That doesn't market very well in the mainstream. So the problem, what is science fiction? Let's start with that. Science fiction is some type of fiction where the writers make some attempt to apply scientific thinking, physics, or facts to their writing, to their universe building process. Through technology, through being in the far future, things like this. 40K never attempted to do this. 40K has never attempted to explain its technology. It has never attempted to apply physics or any form of modern scientific thinking to its universe. Science is supposed to be dead almost in Warhammer 40K, right? Tech priests are just, religious fanatics that don't even really understand what they're doing. They just recite prayers and rituals to get a results that they don't even understand why it's working. It's just, tradition. They don't fix machines anymore, or they don't make new discoveries. They just are barely keeping things working, and technology steadily degrades over time as those repeated traditions done by priests that don't understand what they're doing just gets worse and worse and worse. This doesn't work with the direction Games Workshop is taking 40K now. Games Workshop wants 40K to be a mainstream product, and most importantly, it seems that they've decided that they want 40K to be science fiction, not grimdark. To do this, they have to start introducing physics, science, reason into the 40K universe. They have to start explaining how things work. Or when you hit the mainstream cultures who suddenly see a live action 40K series, they're going to scratch their head and say, what is this shit? I mean, it's just poor writing. It's not science fiction. It's just garbage. That will probably be how a live action show is received by the mainstream scientific world. So I've been watching over the last 5 years or so Games Workshop kind of tying itself in knots to introduce physics into a universe that has not cared about science at all. I made a video a few years back about Battlefleet Gothic and the how would these fleets really be able to fight each other as described in the novels in 40K. It doesn't make any sense. You frequently hear about fleets and ships arriving in at gravity well points, nadir points, or things like that, and then, you know, translating in system, traveling to worlds and planets, and making it there in days or weeks. And my pointing out that modern physics says that's not possible. I mean, it's possible, but it's not possible because in the stories you have usually some type of Army or Space Marine units on the surface of the world announcing that a fleet had arrived in system and it's coming in as reinforcements. And I would then point out, yeah, but if they're arriving at the edge of a solar system and they're making it to the inner solar system, even if you're just talking about the Sol system where you're arriving out at Pluto and coming into Terra and you're making it in there in the space of 5 days, you're traveling at close to 50% the speed of light to do this, which means there's going to be a hella time dilation effect. That means time on Terra and time on the ships are going to be very, very, very different. I mean, in the story, you don't have to think about that. They just write it, and people blissfully read their Horus Heresy novels or shit like that, and they don't care. But when you go mainstream, this will make GW and 40K the laughingstock of the scientific community. And I don't think that's something fans want to experience. One of the other big problems of 40K is literally its title, Warhammer 40,000. And people might ask, well, what does that mean? Oh, it means it takes place 40,000 years from, I guess, when, you know, humanity first developed space travel. Okay, so, but humanity has a galaxy-wide imperium, all right? So, how does this calendar system work? What do you mean? 40,000 years from Earth? So, but you have 1 million different worlds in the galaxy, and they all are going to have different calendars. Are you saying it's the 41st millennium on every world of the Imperium at the same time? And as you look through the timeline of the Imperium, and you know the codexes and the rule books love to have timelines. It's like there are developers in Games Workshop who just have constant hard-ons when they think about making timelines, which leads, and these timelines span the entire galaxy, which once again shows you that, you know, you can be a games developer, you can be an author of books, but it doesn't mean you have the slightest idea about even elementary school physics. Time is not the same everywhere in the galaxy. How could you possibly say that here's this planet over here, here's this other planet 10,000 light years away, and they both have the same time? You literally can't even perceive each other in the same way. They're 10,000 light years apart. That means you're literally a 10,000 year gap between them, by definition. So how can you create a timeline of an entire subsector or sector, much less an entire galaxy, and say all of these stars on this map exist at the same time? When we look at our star maps up in the sky, the stars don't exist all at the same time. We'll say this star is 50 light years away. That star is, you know, 250 light years away. That means they're not existing at the same time. We're looking at that star, what it looked like 250 years ago, and that star, what it looked like 50 years ago. So when you look at a map of the Imperium, what the fuck are you looking at? Well, according to the rule books in GW, you are looking at every single star as it appears at the same point in time. This is not possible in astrophysics. I don't think the developers at 40K really cared when they did all these timelines or maps. Now, this became interesting when I noticed the change in the writing is when they started dealing with the Horus heresy, and more specifically when we started dealing with Primarchs. So Primarchs can't be stupid. Let's all agree upon that. You can't have an idiot Primarch. Regardless of what you think about them, they all must be educated and intelligent, which means we must assume that they have a greater than high school level understanding of physics. So you can't have Primarchs talking to each other or to other Astarte or people and not grasp the fundamentals of physics. This has created a challenge, a subtle challenge, for authors writing dialogues with the Primarchs, which I've noticed. One of the things that I noticed was when Guilliman woke up and when he gave the order to, go put all of the 500 worlds back under Macragge's control. Ultramar, we want to reestablish Ultramar. And they had this problem with, well, what is a map of Ultramar? We don't have a map of Ultramar. We don't know what the 500 worlds were or looked like at the time of the Horus heresy. We don't know. How can we? We don't even know what the 500 worlds were, much less where they are now. So the writers dealt with this by having Guilliman draw, I guess, I don't know how he gave it, in part, a map of Ultramar to the best of his recollection from when he was last awake. But even that is imperfect. And we go back to that point. You got 500 worlds. Now, if you're living in a non-scientific or a sci-fi based story, you can sit there and say, oh, sure, all those worlds exist at the exact same time, and everyone is able to communicate with each other instantaneously, and they all have a shared calendar and blah, blah, blah. And that's what we do in our heads as 40K players, but science fiction community can't accept that. 500 different worlds will exist at 500 different points of time. They can't even see each other. They can't look into the sky and say there are 500 different worlds. Because of the distances, they will all see them at 500 different points in time. So how can you make a map of that? Much less say that what's happening on all of these different 500 worlds is happening simultaneously as with Macragge. It's absurd. So to make a long story short, making Warhammer 40K mainstream could make more Warhammer 40K fans the laughingstock of the sci-fi community at large. Again, the point is, 40K wasn't sci-fi. It was grimdark. It was kind of a pseudo-fantasy fiction. But now, if it wants to be a science fiction show, you can't do that anymore. I'm sorry, 40K fans. You're going to have to learn science or look like a fool. You don't want the Emperor and the Primarchs looking like babbling morons. They're not supposed to be that. They're supposed to be from an age of reason. So they in the Avenging Sun, they tried the novel The Avenging Sun. They tried to make up for this with Gilliman. They had a little paragraph where Gilliman was reading a book about the Imperium's calendar system and acknowledging that we don't know what time it is actually in the Imperium right now. We don't have a date, and we don't have a dating system. And they state, to GW's credit, that it's not the 41st millennium. In fact, they give us a range that even the Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade really didn't happen at M99 of the 40th, year, 999 of the 40th millennium. It couldn't have, even from the reckoning of Earth, Terra. So really, 40K, even at the current day, quote unquote day, is literally a time span wiggle room of 1,000 years, is how Avenging Sun explained it. At any given day, at any given event, in any of the novels that you read, it could literally happen at any point of 1,000 years of the date given. You understand? So if they sit there and say, oh, well, here's the Age of Strife. This was, year 439 of M37. When you see that date on any of your timelines, in any of the codexes, according to Avenging Sun, in reality, that date has a 1,000-year wiggle room in relation to the events happening there compared to any other events happening in the Imperium at around that time. They really get into a problem with the Horus Heresy itself. And Horus, and the Traitor Legions making as fast as they can to get to Terra. But even from that standpoint, time cannot possibly be the same for the legions as it is for Terra itself, especially if they're going that fast. You already have the problem with them traveling through the warp and whatever the hell that's going to do to time. But then you also have the travel of them just traveling in real space at near light speeds. It's absurd to say, oh, it took them about 3 or 4 years to get here. 3 or 4 years to travel half the galaxy? Fuck. That's pretty fast. Time does some pretty crazy stuff when you do that. So with the final books and at the end of the Horus Heresy, again, they start to address this and say time on Terra passed much differently and much more slowly than it did for the events going on at like Istvan 3 and Istvan 4 and the flight of the Eisenstein and all of this. Yeah, it really actually took much from their standpoint, from the standpoint of those people trying to get back to War and Terra, what was happening. For them, it was a much shorter period of time. But on Terra, they're like, yeah, that's old news, guy. We knew that was happening years ago. Why? Well, because for us, it's been like 4 years. I know for you, it's only been a few months for you in your flight to the Eisenstein to get here as fast as you can to warn us. But for us, it's been 4 years already, and we kind of knew that shit was coming. Even if it was just the fact that the Emperor was able to sense it, or Astropaths were able to pick it up, or Malkador was able to figure it out from his spy networks, by the time they got there, Horus's treason was old news. And so they had time to prepare and think about how to handle this. So I guess to bring Warhammer into the science fiction community, we're not going to get time travel per se, but they're going to pull some weird Doctor Who shit and basically say that there is no fixed timeline in 40K. It's roughly 10,000 years from the standpoint of Terra. From the standpoint of any other planet in the Imperium, maybe it was 10,000 years. Maybe it was 11,000 years. Maybe it was 9,000 years. We don't know. They give us a whole 1,000-year wiggle room with how the rest of the Imperium has experienced the last 10,000 years. Isn't that great? Wow. So it will be interesting to see how they continue to retcon and reshape 40K from grimdark into science fiction. I know this was a long video, but it's a complicated, but I think very important issue, which I guarantee you no other channel will mention or have the brain capacity to even discuss. So you heard it here first. Congratulations. Bye.